Gyudon is one of my favorite things to make. It's incredibly simple and it should be very, very cheap. I want to see if there's a big difference between a $10 beef rice bowl and a $100 beef rice bowl. And once I have both bowls of food ready, I'm gonna have my wife blind taste test them to see which one she likes better and whether or not the $100 bowl is actually worth the price, because you could buy 10 of the other one. So today I'm gonna be making traditional gyudon with different ingredients depending on the price point. I have a beautiful A5 Wagyu New York that I picked up from Awajimaya. This by itself was $60. I also have some of my favorite. This is just top round sukiyaki style beef. It's cut very thin. I also picked this up from Awajimaya, and this only cost me a couple of dollars per serving. Now you may be wondering, Paul, how do you get to a $10 price point or a $100 price point? There's a couple of differences that I'm gonna share with you along the way. Now in Demon Slayer, Rengoku does eat a traditional gyudon. This looks like a traditional gyudon that you can get anywhere in Japan, especially if you were to get this from something at like a train station or anything like that. I had a traditional gyudon when I was doing my challenge with onigiri in Japan, and it just tasted like a really, really nice gyudon, like a bowl of food. But a lot of the time, because they are so affordable, they do have to cut back on certain things. And one of those things is admittedly the dashi. Dashi is a staple in Japanese cuisine, and I am using two types of dashi for these recipes. Now the first cheaper gyudon is going to get something that I actually really love using, and this is grashi little granules. Think of granules. Think of this as what you would use as like chicken bouillon in a way. This is granulated dashi, and I'm using about 1/2 cup of water with about 1 tablespoon of dashi. The dashi for the expensive beef bowl is going to be very different. Those granules almost instantly incorporate into the water, and this is ready to go. We only need a couple more things to make our gyudon sauce, and one of those things is soy sauce. The really expensive one is gonna get 2 types of soy sauce. This one gets regular soy sauce only. We're gonna hit this with around 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. It's gonna get a really nice salty flavor. The next thing is around 2 teaspoons of sugar, just to help sweeten it up just a little bit because there is a good amount of salt in here. Then we're gonna do about 1 tablespoon of mirin. You can do a little bit more if you really want to. And if you don't have mirin, you can use rice vinegar with a little bit of sugar, and it's kind of similar. Lastly is some good old cooking sake. We don't really need too much of this. We're gonna go with about a 1/2 cup, about the same amount that we used as water. Now this doesn't take too long to come together. I actually don't want this to boil too much, because before it all evaporates, we have to start adding everything else to it. First is 1 part of a green onion. This is actually part of the bottom of the green onions that I'm gonna use to top the dish with. Next is 1/4 of a white onion. I apologize, this is a yellow onion. But the difference is that this is cut fairly thick compared to the other onion I'm going to use for the expensive one, and there's a reason for that. Because the other beef is so expensive, the A5, I actually want the onions to not overpower it, so I did cut them thinner for that one. What's great about making gyudon is if you were making this at home, you could do a quadruple batch of this sauce, even with the onions, cool it down and put it in the fridge, and then anytime you want gyudon, you can just thinly cut some steak, some chicken, whatever you have laying around, and just make it on the fly. It's super simple to put together. Now, because I want both of these to be done around the same time, I'm actually not going to cook the onions as far as I need to, because I don't want to put the beef in yet. If I put the beef in right now, it's actually going to be a disservice to the $10 bowl, and I want to give it its best shot, so we're not going to overcook it. I'm going to put this to the side, and we're going to start the expensive one. Now the expensive one is really interesting because it is this beautiful A5 Wagyu. I'm gonna be searing it lightly first, and then I'll show you what I'm gonna do with it after. This is going to get just a little bit of salt, not too much, because the gyudon sauce will be slightly salty. I'm actually treating this A5 Wagyu as I would maybe a piece of tuna that I'm searing. If I over-sear this right now, it's actually just gonna be overcooked, really expensive beef when I go to add it with my sauce later. And while this pan is warming up, if you want some amazing anime-inspired or Japanese-inspired recipes, you should check out both of my books over on chefpk.com. Quest for the Best is based on my adventures in Japan, and this has a bunch of the different recipes that I had eaten out in Japan during that series. One of my favorites is a story about Kenchan curry, and it is one of the best, most spicy curries I've ever had, and there's a recipe in here for that. Annie Bites Master Edition is a collection of some of my favorite anime-inspired recipes that you can make at home. You can get both of these as a bundle that I had sold over on Kickstarter for the same price as the Kickstarter, because yes, I ordered extra books. So if you want the opportunity to get both of these books at a discount, head over to chefpk.com right now, just open it in a different tab while you're still listening to me talk, and order both of those books while you can. Now I'm gonna sear this very, very lightly. What's interesting about Wagyu is that you don't want the pan to be too high, because then you have a chance of burning it, but you also don't want the pan to be too low, because if it's too low, you end up rendering too much of the fat. Let's see. Ooh, that's almost ready. I'm gonna flip this. You can see this is already done. That's so fast. I have a little rack right here that I'm gonna use, and I'm gonna cool this down on, kind of. Oh my God, can I figure this out? That's it, this beef is done. Any more than that and you're absolutely going to overcook it. That was probably 60 seconds, but this is what the beef looks like right now. It still hopefully is pretty raw, but I'm actually gonna put it in the fridge to cool it down. What I learned from that Food Wars video with the very expensive rice bowl, hold on one second, is that because of the content of fat in the Wagyu, I feel like it cooks to a lower temperature. And it sounds kind of weird. What I mean is that a medium for Wagyu is actually different than a medium for like a prime cut steak. The reason is because the amount of fat in there actually changes at when the steak becomes medium. It was the weirdest thing. But now I have to make the sauce for the expensive one. And the dashi for that is actually this. This is a homemade dashi that is apparently a year old, but it's fine, it was in the freezer. This dashi is homemade, fish flakes and everything. So this one is a little more expensive to make than the granules by about a few dollars. But here's what I'm gonna need. I need a half a cup of dashi, and here's what I'm gonna do, pour that in there. Just gonna do one of those. I'm gonna melt down about a half a cup of dashi. The smell of this is so much different than the granules. Even Gandalf is like, bro, give me some of that dashi. Now once I have about a half a cup of liquid melted, I'm gonna remove this from the pan very carefully, plop it back in here, and this is gonna go back in the freezer. Now this is going to be relatively the same. This is gonna get one soy sauce for now, and I'm gonna put the second one in later. So we're gonna do 1, 2, 3. Gonna do a pinch of sugar. This is the 1 teaspoon of sugar, about a half a cup of our cooking sake. We really don't need to use an expensive sake here because it does get cooked off. I think it's almost a waste to use an expensive cooking sake. And then a little bit of our mirin. This is going to be the base for the gyudon for the expensive one too. And you can see it's almost the same. The dashi is the biggest difference here. This also gets 1 piece of our green onion. I'm actually not gonna add the other onions quite yet. I'm just cooking this down for about a minute to get this nice and soft before I add in the other onions. And the other onions aren't gonna cook too long because this is how much thinner they are. They're almost transparent. Very, very, very thin. These are going to get added straight into our broth to flavor it and soften them up. Give this a quick stir. I'm gonna cook this for about 20 seconds at the most, just until it really comes up to a simmer again. Now that this is simmered, I'm just gonna turn this off. We're still gonna use this broth for the beef, but I can't put the A5 in there yet. This is just gonna sit off to the side while we finish the first beef. So in every versus video, I have my sous chef Gandalf over here to make sure I do this all correctly. So I'm gonna first plate up the cheaper gyudon because I think it has a little more resiliency and it can be held longer than the really expensive gyudon. So this just has to come back up to temperature, and I probably should have had this still going. You're gonna get a fishy later. Once this liquid comes back up to a boil, this is where we can add all of our beef. Now this is a pretty significant amount of beef, but I think it's really worth the $10. Anytime I was at a Yoshinoya or anything similar, I would always ask for extra meat because they would have it as an option. And so this one's gonna get extra beef because I think for 10 bucks, that's worth it. Now this just has to cook for just a couple of minutes. You actually don't want to cook this too long either because it's such thin cuts of beef. This is what I was talking about, is that if you had this liquid ready, absolutely just take out some of the sliced beef, even from the freezer, thaw it out for just a little bit, and then make your gyudon. You can see how quickly this has already cooked. Look at this, that's done. That's it. Give this a quick taste. Oh yeah, now we're gonna start on the really expensive $100 bowl. This has been simmering for a little bit, so this way it was actually hot. I'm gonna turn this down. I'm gonna move this stove very carefully over here because I actually have to thinly slice the beef. Why was that so hard to say? Hi, are you supervising? This is our Wagyu. It's nice and chilled now, and I really just wanna take a big old chunk out of it. I'd actually asked the butcher if they could give me thinly sliced beef, and they weren't able to do it. It's so good. So I'm gonna be slicing this myself. Now I do have to almost slice this like sashimi. Have to do it at a really, really nice wide angle because it's actually a very thin steak. Remember, this piece of beef was $60. Rachel's looking at me like I'm crazy. She really didn't want to know the price of this. I told her it was a $100 bowl. Oh, this is beautiful. It's almost sashimi at this point, but we do have to slice it very, very thin because if we don't, it's just not really a gyudon. You know, if you want a little piece of Wagyu, good boy. This is what my steak looks like. Look at the glisten. There's so much fat on this that does need to be cooked a little bit further. Not much though. So I have to time this properly. How do I want to do this? I didn't think this far ahead. We're just gonna plate up both of them now. No gyudon is complete without rice, so I have some steamed rice here. This is gonna be getting about the same on each one. What's really nice about having steamed rice with this beef rice bowl in particular is that it just absorbs all those flavors. The big thing with gyudon too is you actually don't want all of the liquid onto the rice because it can make it super wet. So instead you take the beef out. I'm gonna garnish with one of these green onions too, why not? Take some of the onions with it. Then you can take some of the liquid and put it on top of the beef. Again, now if I need, you know what? You can stay there. Both bowls will also be getting some of this pickled ginger right on top, a little bit of sesame seed, and then a decent helping of sliced green onion for garnish. This is the regular $10 gyudon. Really simple, really delicious. But now I have to plate up the other guy. This is why this would be super expensive, because this is a pain to plate up. Now this bowl is only gonna get half of this steak because it's quite a lot. Now to plate this up though, I'm gonna be actually treating this similar to like sukiyaki. Not sukiyaki, I apologize, shabu shabu, where I'm going to be dipping this into the hot liquid and cooking it for just a couple of seconds. And I literally have to do each piece individually. And then we're gonna plate this up onto here. Bring some of the onions with it. Oh, this looks ridiculous. I did mention there is a second soy sauce, but I still have to add that right at the end. The one nice thing about making the A5 like this is that a lot of that liquid starts to really reduce, and those onions are going to be absolutely fantastic. It's gonna be a ton of flavor in this. This is the last piece of Wagyu right on there. We're gonna take our onion, of course, because this is gonna have a ton of flavor. But look at these onions now. Look at how gorgeous those look. My mouth is watering. That's gonna be right on top of there. This one's also gonna get a little bit of sesame seed just right on top. Green onion on top of the onion. Of course, pickled ginger. We're gonna add this to the side this time. And this is what puts it over the top. This is the second soy sauce. This is a smoked wood barrel aged soy sauce. And this one bottle is about $30 and I've had it for like 2 years now. So I'm trying to find uses for it. This gets just the smallest touch of it because it is very strong. We really don't want to overdo it. And these, my friends, are two almost similar looking beef rice bowls. This was inspired by my adventures of watching Demon Slayer again, but realistically, these are inspired by my adventures in Japan. And if you want to read those adventures, consider picking up my new book, Quest for the Best Tokyo. I promise you're gonna love this book. It was a labor of love. I was flipping through it earlier today and it just gave me so many memories, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Go over to chefpk.com and buy yours today. Now it is time for the taste test. Rachel, are you ready? So my wife is going to be taste testing these, and she does really enjoy gyudon, but not as much as me, so I think she's gonna be a good test of this. You saw me make these, so I don't know if it's even worth blindfolding you, but you can just close your eyes and I could feed you?
I mean, you could, yeah.
Okay, she's going to blind herself with my Quest for the Best headband over on chefpk.com. You know, always be plugging. You look like a really cool anime character with the Naruto in the middle.
Oh, I have a weird shaped head.
Yes. Have you seen mine? I feel like Mr. Miyagi. So we're gonna go with one of these. I'm switching them around. I don't think it's gonna matter because you're blind.
All bites.
Yeah, this is gonna be the first one. We're gonna do a little bit of rice and just a little bit of the beef. I'm actually going to assemble it so she gets a little onion on there too, and a little bit of the ginger, and this. This is this one. Ready?
That's a Wagyu one.
Instantly you would know. Okay, now I'm gonna give you another piece.
Do I still have to be blindfolded then?
Probably not need to be blindfolded now because it's very obvious. Here is the regular gyudon. It's a big bite. One bite of each. Now, you know how much I spent on these. Okay, we know that this is about a $10 bowl. This costs about $100 to make, to buy everything for. Granted, there's a little bit more Wagyu, so you can maybe get 2 bowls, but you still have to pay for everything. Which one would you order?
I feel like we already know this answer. Just because I'm not a huge Wagyu fan. It's good, but it's the texture of the Wagyu that I'm not a fan of.
So it doesn't like too fatty of a texture. Now, I'm gonna give you my take. I'm gonna actually go for the Wagyu first as well.
It was like, why spend $100 on something that's already good? Like, it's good.
They're really nice, really fatty. Wagyu is actually very buttery and almost creamy in a way, right? And it is delicious. Don't get me wrong. But when I dig into this one, is it gonna be $190 more delicious is the real question. Not as tender, Flavors are good.
Yeah.
I would order 10 of these before I order one of this. 100%. This will feed you once a day for 10 days. This will feed you one time, if you're lucky. I think if you're making this at home, make the cheaper version. If you have some money to splurge and you want to impress some friends, take a stab at some Wagyu. Otherwise, buy my books on chefpk.com. My name is Chef PK, and remember, keep playing with your food. We have to disappear. Ready, run, run, run away.